Welcome everyone. I'm here with a special guest, Lexx. Is it Fusco? Fusco?
Fusco.
Fusco. Lexx Fusco. The what is the total of titles that you served on It Only Leaves One Alive?
Well, perhaps too many. So I'm the writer, director, producer, sound designer, co-sound designer on that, editor. There's lots of stuff that came together to make that passion project a real thing, which is cool. Casting director, which was also fun, albeit stressful, but really cool because I got to connect with my very talented friends and network that I was like, hey, do you want to do this crazy thing?
Yeah. That's basically how it went. Lex just messaged me out of the blue, sent me a script. I read it. It was awesome. I guess, let's see here. How would you describe the concept? I mean, you've got all the log lines and elevator pitches in your head, I'm sure.
Uh, I would describe it as a reverse slasher. Because typically in slashers, the whole function is, the final girl, the virtuous good one, survives because she's good and virtuous. And it only leaves one alive. It only leaves the worst person alive. So I'd say it's like Evil Dead meets Clue.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. Yeah, because it kind of turns into a reverse murder mystery. Where it's meta and it's fun, and I think the fun thing about it that I love about meta stuff is that it comments on the tropes while also using the tropes as a backdrop for the story. So that's always fun. I play a character named Charlie, very bad man, but I guess in the tradition of stuff like this, most of the characters are bad, so you want to see them die.
Yeah.
But that was a fun process.
I'm sure it was. And like, so my husband Connor, he edited together the whole thing. I just recently cut together like a little behind the scenes thing, and I got to listen to all of your ADR all the way through for the first time. And there was a little moment that popped up in there that just made me smile, which was, rotten hell, Charlie.
Yeah.
That made me laugh. That was great. But I would love to hear because Charlie is a very complicated character. Charlie was a very hard character for me to write because he is someone who to me is so bad that I was like, oh no, like does it come off as like too obvious? And then I had people read the script and be like, no, like he scared me because he sudden it was like a turn and I was like, oh my gosh. And so you had like a big challenge when it came to stepping into Charlie. So did you like do anything to prepare for that character? Were there any insights or like character comps you were thinking of?
It's mostly just people I've known in real life, because there's a lot of people like that in real life. It's to me, it's more common than it's not. It's just more about when the facade drops, like how violent is the explosion. That's just kind of a dude thing, I guess, to project a lot of strength to cover up any kind of lingering. I guess you're just terrified that people might think less of you for some reason. But it only expresses itself through typical masculine behaviors of being in control or being strong, having a plan, making yourself the leader, things like that. So it was mostly just like knowing people in my life that were almost terrified of not projecting those values, and that kind of drove a lot of their behaviors. The fact that it feels like it is all coming from a place of inner fear. So you kind of overcompensate by projecting strength. And then once that all falls apart, you kind of lash out. So that, yes, kind of witnessing that in person, seeing that play out, and also kind of like you said, I don't know, I've been confused for a long time to see certain behaviors that are to me giant red flags, but other people just kind of wave away as just normal or joking or something like that. I've often told myself that I overthink it, but something like this really did kind of validate a lot of the frustrations that I've had in those scenarios, where I'm just like, how does anyone not see that this is shitty behavior, and how is everyone okay with it, or even worse, how does everyone like it? Like they think that this is the cool thing to do. All he's doing is telling you that he knows what he's doing. He's not demonstrating it in any way. So it's a lot of that, and I think that led to a lot of my whatever satisfaction I could get out of playing the role. I definitely got in that regard.
Amazing. And I think it's one of the many reasons why you did such a great job portraying Charlie is because of that thought process of like having empathy for someone who has no empathy, which I think is really important because like when I wrote It Only Leaves One Alive, my whole thing, like my Lex headcanon is that like bad people cannot change. They won't change, and it's because they don't think that they're bad. And that's like why this thing exists is to like to punish them in the only way that it knows how to punish them, which is to make them suffer. But like for me, I'm like, Charlie's not scared. He's just a dick. And so to have an actor come in and be like, or I don't know, maybe he's more of a person. So that was really great, and it was just so wonderful to like work with you on that, and so awful. I do remember like when we were actually filming, like 30 seconds after like the scene would end, I would just go, ew, ew. It was very tragic. Um, so you know, it was that was a really cool experience because it's something that I'm always very curious about when it comes to like projects like these is like I cannot imagine what Elliot Page and Patrick Wilson's relationship was like while shooting Hard Candy because like Patrick Wilson is such like a great guy and having to like switch into someone who is just built for terror is just like something that is so stressful to me and like something I had to like constantly remind myself as I'm like it's just Lawrence. It's just
Really? Oh
Lawrence.
man.
Charlie can't hurt you. um so like when you first read the script, I tried to like not give you as I tried to keep it as spoiler free as possible. What were your like initial reactions, not only to Charlie, but to like the script in general?
I'm gonna try to be spoiler free because I think I want people to experience the twists and things as they come. So typically, trying to think of how to phrase this. My relationship with things like this, where it's like it's implied that there's some kind of like structure, or it's implied there's some kind of greater meaning behind things. Typically, along the way, I'm trying to guess what that connection might be, and typically, I'm disappointed. Usually, I'll think of something that, in my mind, which is going to sound pretentious, but in my mind, ends up being a lot more clever and interesting than what the thing actually ends up being. So I was very excited that that didn't happen here. I won't say like I didn't outthink the script at all, which is really nice. And I think the message that it reinforces is really interesting. Because it's funny because I was just playing Silent Hill, the new one, which my partner was actually getting upset at last night because it does a really good job of exploring how women can be vicious to each other. Dudes are very simple, and I think that simplicity is what kind of leads to some of the erratic behavior you see. They're so damn simple that they get so like ape-like mad when they're not in control that they just they just lose their minds. I'm going to be very gender normative here for a minute, but women can be so much more imaginative when it comes to how to destroy somebody or how to like undo them or make their life terrible. So I liked that the script kind of acknowledged that in kind of soft saying that version of terror and maliciousness is so much worse than what dudes usually do. Women can create an entire universe of terror by like manipulating social relationships and things. So that was something that I liked a lot, and I like any horror that explores that. And lately there has been some, which is really nice. I feel like until maybe the 2000s, horror, even when it was about women, was still just from a very dude's perspective. Like here's this Hulk who's chasing a poor innocent, the last girl, the virgin who has to survive by her wits and usually with some kind of phallic weapon. And she never gets to shoot anyone, does she? She's got to just barely survive a series of vicious physical assaults. So then we started getting, cooler shit. Hereditary is really good. Even Babadook, like movies that explore aspects of terror that are so much worse than just somebody's trying to stab me. So I appreciated that about this script too, is that it plays with the tropes, but also explores them and ends up exploring like a horror I think that most people could relate to.
Well, thank you. That was the goal. Like, I want to be the grilled cheese of the entertainment industry. Like generally well liked, a comfort to most, and you get it. Um, and horror is such a fun genre that has a lot of tropes that really work for it, and a lot of the tropes that I think should be celebrated.
Hmm.
Because I think people misrepresent trope a lot of the times, and it's like it's why it works. Tropes are the salt and pepper to recipes. Like you have those in as a basis of like what brings everything together, kind of like what makes it work in the first place. And so for people to be like, I hate tropes, I'm like, okay, well. That's how stories work. Those are the wheels that like make the car move forward. Like you can have a different body, you can have a different color of the car and things of that nature, but like these are the things that make it go. Um, so I would love to transition over and chit chat a little bit more about general horror because you brought up several things that were nerve touch points for me. So I guess like first and foremost, my question would be like, would you consider yourself a horror fan? And if so, like, do you find yourself fitting under more like one umbrella than you do another?
I wouldn't say I am. No, not in the way that like people who would self-identify as horror fans are horror fans. I think I have a lot of respect for the genre because it feels like it's where a lot of clever filmmaking happens. Um, in the again back in the day, I guess it was a way for like special effects artists and things to show off just how smart they were by making really cool effects with no budget, or creating an ominous atmosphere by just shooting at a cabin in the woods and using like the pacing, the musical, the writing to make things scary. So I respect I now that I'm older, I respect the format a great deal, is because it's often a place where people can punch up with their ambitions. Um, sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Oh, it was just like if you are a horror fan, do you have like a specific subgenre that you
Ah,
prefer?
gotcha. Yeah, the one I kind of described earlier. I really like it when a film can create a parallel for something that is kind of dark and difficult to talk about. So like in Hereditary, the way that you can resent your family for being a burden, like you have to love them, you have to, but also goddamn, do they drive you on your last nerve a lot of the time. And so to explore that through the lens of something fantastic is awesome. And it's a little more cool than I mean, I still have an affection for the silly roller coaster type movies. I was thinking like Evil Dead. Evil Dead's pretty simple. It's like there's a curse and now we have wacky stuff until everyone's dead, which is awesome in its own way. But I don't know. I typically like it when, yeah, a horror film can help me feel what somebody else has felt. Uh, and yeah, most other films, even dramas, sometimes aren't that effective.
Have you seen The Orphanage?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay, if you want to see a good version of the Babadook, that's one of my hot takes.
Ooh, okay, I'm excited for this because I like the
Please
Babadook.
check out The Orphanage. It is a Spanish language film. It's Guillermo del Toro produced.
Ah,
It is what I think it does really well
El
is it strikes a
Orfanto.
wonderful balance between is it a spooky ghost movie or is it a descent into madness story?
Mm.
And I feel like either audience is satisfied at the end, and that's what's really important to me in movies like that. Like, I think there's a really big difference between a twist and a lie. And I think that movies that have a rewatchability to them that are twisty and turny and like have question marks like that, like I think that's what marks a really good movie. We watch The Orphanage every year. I think the performances are stellar. It has like just enough jump scares to like jingle keys
Mm.
in front of people and stuff like that, but it's really spooky, it's very engaging, and whether or not you take it as a oh my gosh, this woman's losing her mind because she's lost her son, or a oh my gosh, there are ghost children inside of this orphanage that have taken her son, when the credits roll, either way you feel satisfied. And so when those two people get into a room together to talk about it, it's like the Spider-Man meme, like they're just kind of pointing at each other, versus like the Babadook, which even Jennifer Kent has had to like kind of walk back because like unfortunately that movie was sold hook, line, sinker as a monster movie. Like I remember being in the theater, seeing that trailer and hearing that "Bah," for the first time and being like, yes, give me that, give me all of that. And then I watched it and I was like,
You just wanted some stalking?
I wanted some stalking. I wanted some creepy stuff. Like I think like
Hmm.
it's very Australian as well. So like tone like it's like when things are very British, you're like, what is happening? Like very like tonally it was not what I was walking in for. And so it left my brain on a mode of being able to pick things apart more because I already wasn't in for the ride, which wasn't necessarily a fair watch. But then I saw the orphanage and I was like, oh, this this is it. So I hope you enjoy it if you ever get a chance to check it out. I have it on DVD if you need it. But so okay, great start. So one of my favorite networking questions to ask people because I feel like I can learn a lot about them based on how they answer it. And for you, this might be a little bit more specific because you're not necessarily like in the genre. So take some creative liberties with this as you see fit. But I like to ask people, what is your favorite horror movie? But I break it down into three titles. So, title number one is your comfort horror movie. This is the one you can watch over and over again. It's always scary, it's always like something you enjoy. Typically, this is a gateway horror movie, like the thing that got you into the genre in the first place. The second one is the horror movie you recommend the most. Now, I know a lot goes into recommending movies to people, but the thought process here is the mirror that you're putting up to yourself is how do you want people to perceive you? Because if you give me a movie recommendation and I want to send you a death threat afterwards, there's been some kind of miscommunication. So it's like, what are the kinds of movies that people want to see, like associate with you? And then the last one is your guilty pleasure. This isn't like your Serbian films or human centipedes or anything like that. This is like the movie that you find yourself defending in conversation. For me, for a while before Fede Alvarez was cool, it was his Evil Dead
Dude,
remake.
I was just about to bring it up. Holy shit, that movie's so good.
It's so good. It legitimized the Evil Dead franchise, by the way, because like Sam Raimi accidentally made a horror comedy because people were like, Sam, this is hilarious. And Sam went, yeah, yeah, it is. Totally did that on purpose. And so when that movie came out, which was a practical effects dream, people were like, this isn't my Evil Dead. And it's like, yeah, it's not
What?
supposed to be
Who
death.
said that?
Like it's
Oh, they were expecting something campy. I have no idea what the
they,
reaction to that movie was.
oh yeah, no.
I just walked out of the theater being like, "Oh, that was the shit."
Well, because like Fede Alvarez, like his whole thing is no joy. Like his production company, his mandate is no joy. And so when people went in to see an Evil Dead reboot, which I don't know what they were expecting, especially with this like rise of new horror in the late 2000 or early 2010s, people were shocked. People were like, "Whoa, that was like gross. Oh my gosh, that was like really dark." Um, and like the wild thing is that like despite being so much darker thematically, character-wise, like it takes itself so much more seriously, the sexual assault aspects are so much more diminished in Fede Alvarez's version. It's very strange. But more often than not, I was like, this is a really good example of a horror movie. But because it was in this IP space, people will be like, no, I didn't like it. And I'm like, well, fair. Like it's people who are like, they I like McDonald's burgers. And you go, oh, okay, cool. Here's a Whopper. Here's like a different take on it. And people are like, that's not my fast food. And it's like, okay, well, it's not really supposed to be.
Okay, huh? How bizarre.
Yes. So what are your thoughts? What are your answers?
All right,
Comfort movie first.
sure. I think comfort movie. I know that Stephanie's comfort movie is The Shining, so it's almost become mine. But I still think mine is probably The Frighteners. It's kind of like you were saying of like, it's kind of the perfect mix of everything. It's charming, it's fun, it's whimsical. It doesn't get too heavy, but there's some stuff in there. Like it's got the right amount of punch for just like a good ride, I think. And yeah, all the acting is great. So
It's got some great jump scares, and it's got Michael J. Fox.
yeah, it's got Michael
Doing
J.
something
Fox.
very different from his other stuff.
Yeah, playing a sleazebag that eventually gets redeemed, but I don't know. It's fun. It's fun. It's cool. And yeah, I agree. Yeah, he plays against type a little bit, but you still root for him just because he's so damn charming.
Yeah.
For my horror to recommend, man, that one's tough. For what's weird, I never really think of recommendations as being a reflection of my taste. Usually I try my hardest to match to somebody else's, but through that lens, and I think this is still just, ever since I saw it, I've been amazed by it, is Night of the Hunter. I don't know if you can call that a horror, but I think I would. It's like before a lot of what we would consider modern horror tropes had been established, or the genre had been established with the markers that it had, I guess, since the 70s. But yeah, also in terms of just like bad guys, very bad men. Was it Robert Mitchum in that film? Is just like, he's also in Cape Fear, so he plays some astoundingly bad dudes. Yeah, that movie I think is one I'd recommend, just because maybe I'm projecting too much, but I don't feel like a lot of people have seen it. But I do feel like its look will immediately grab folks, even if they're not into like, air quotes, classic film or black and white film. Yeah. Guilty pleasure movie. That's tricky because I feel like I'm always on the other side of that conversation. I'm the hater. I usually am like, that movie wasn't very good. So I don't really find myself defending movies all that much, especially like, there are some films that I'll defend just because they're so campy that I love them. And you would think that would cross over with horror a lot, but most people in horror tend to love camp. So there's not a lot of like, I can't think of any cracks at the moment where I fell outside of most people in terms of liking a horror film. I'll think about that for a bit.
Yes, noodle it over. Well, it's interesting that you bring up Night of the Hunter, because this is something that I've discussed recreationally throughout my tenure in this industry, is that like time turns movies into other genres. I think if you asked anybody under the age of 25 if Alien is a horror movie, I think they would disagree with you. I think they would consider it a sci-fi thriller, despite the fact that it literally is a haunted house movie in space. And it's because it's so slow. It moves so much like a thriller, and thrillers like are a relatively new genre in the respect that like they came out in the last 40 or so odd years, because you had dramas, you had action movies, and you had horror movies. And so when thrillers came about, it was like, hey, there's not enough punches and bullets to make this an action movie, but it's like still adrenaline pumping. There aren't really any monsters or scares in it, but it's still like, chilling and thrilling. And it's got a lot of like character stuff in it, but it's not like sappy or deep like a drama. And that's what the thriller ended up being, is people were like, oh wait, this is like the perfect middle ground for all of these genres. And so it's very interesting because I saw Aliens first as like a child, and then didn't see Alien until I was a teenager, and I was bored out of my skull. Which is which is sad, because like Alien is now like one of my favorite movies, but I was like, where are the xenomorphs? What is happening? And I remember watching it with my dad, who was like, Lex, what's the title of the movie? And I was like, Alien. And he's like, yeah, there's only one. And I was like, what the heck? Why? But I turn into Obadiah Stane from the 2008 Iron Man anytime I watch Aliens, because I'm like, James Cameron made this with a box of scraps and $18 million in 1984. What do you mean we can't do practical effects in 2025? But yeah, so those are all good answers. It is shocking to me how many people slate The Shining as a comfort movie to me. Because it's so messed up, but to me, again, it's so long. It is like, for me, rewatchability we have to be in and out in like maybe 95, 100 minutes. And the only thing Stanley Kubrick and I have in common is our lack of brevity. But all good answers. What is a horror movie you're confident you could survive? Playing by the rules
And that's
of
a
the horror
tough one.
movie, by the way. This isn't like, oh, I just simply wouldn't get on roller coasters in the Final Destination universe or something.
Yeah, no, you have to make all the decisions, and that's a tough one. I don't think it would have to be like, if there's some early 2000s techno thriller where it just requires like the ability to use email, that maybe like, well, let me think about that. I don't know if that exists though. I'm trying to think of like, Trying to think of some film where, yeah, just like the ability to properly send a text message is all that was required. Um, hmm.
One missed call.
Yeah,
Uh,
like Shutter Island. I just wouldn't be crazy
I
there.
just simply wouldn't kill my wife.
Yeah.
No, I think like I say Halloween for this one, like the original Halloween, because Michael is just a guy at that point.
Oh,
Kick him down a
that's
flight of stairs, you know, like
yeah. I guess he.
it's
Well, no, he stabs somebody like through a door, so they show him having superhuman strength, right? In the first one.
I mean, he impales someone with a knife, and I think the implication is more just like it's really long, and like they tack on the end when he's like he got back up for, after being like shot or something. But that's just John Carpenter's inability to close a loop.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like he's still like canonically at that point in time is just a guy, and I'm like, if Loomis had just waited an extra 30 seconds and put an extra bullet in that motherfucker, he probably would have gone down and stayed down. But yeah, I mean, slashers are usually a good thing to do here. I like a lot of screams are in here for this question. But no, I think a one missed call or some kind of like chain letter movie, I'm sure exists. You would have thrived in.
And I'm still turning on that one. I don't know. I try to. I could. I could probably survive Jaws because I haven't. Like, I could probably stay on a boat even if it's getting chomped on by a giant shark.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that tracks. That's good. Um,
Jeez.
so going back to the conversation of tropes, which I always think is a great segue into hot takes.
Mhm.
So like let's establish the baseline of uh let's establish the baseline of what we consider to be tropes. So do you have any like tropes that you really enjoy seeing and any examples, and then tropes that you are simply sick of, and any examples of those? You can do this for any movie, by the way, like any
Yeah.
genre. Like they all come with their tropes.
Well, there's a horror, I guess, trope. It may not be a trope as much as it's bad writing, but I've never been a fan of like, yeah, horror films where there's an inexplicable downturn. Like usually I like it when there is like a plot hole or something that's unexplained until the very end. And then that's what's used to justify the horror returning all of a sudden, like right before the credits. I feel like Drag Me to Hell had a good version of that, where it's like there was an in-universe reason that was set up by the writing that the curse is still happening at the end, regardless of the fact that they thought that they understood the nature of the thing. And I guess the other version of that trope is like I don't like it when like something horror is so easily explained or quantified. You know, the final girl goes to the library and finds the newspaper clipping about the ritualistic sacrifice that happened here 20 years ago. And then like it's just like binary. Now all of a sudden she has the power to beat the thing. I always like it when there's an element that's unexplained, especially when it comes to like slasher villains. You know, Halloween's a good one. Despite, I guess, the Rob Zombie remake, they've never attempted to explain why Michael is the way he is or why he does what he does. And sometimes that's fun. You know, not everything needs an explanation. Jaws is also good. He just wants to eat. That's pretty simple. As far as favorite horror tropes, I don't know if this may be becoming a trope at this point, but kind of what I said, where like something is representational. There's there's something fantastic that is meant to be a parallel for something very real and common. So you invented, you know, a demon child or a projection of a demon child to represent just the terror of motherhood and the difficulty of that guilt or the frustration or the lack of sleep or whatever. So yeah, I'm usually a fan of that because, like I said, it gives me something to intellectually chew on as it goes, versus just the surface level thrills of a big man with a knife.
Big man knife bad. No, those are great. I think like uh one of my least favorite tropes is people trying to subvert a trope and like wag their finger at it in the movie itself. Um because it's so weird. It gives such a like, oh, you must be fun at the parties you're not invited to kind of vibe.
Yeah, I'm too
It
smart for
is.
this kind of thing.
It
Yeah.
is yeah, like so it is definitely a trope that has risen in you know, the last I would say like 10 to 15 years, which is the trope of um horror is stupid and you're stupid for liking horror. So here's the complete opposite of what you've come to expect. Um and that's just like that's wild to me because I'm just like damn, like if you did this in any other movie, people would be like, "Wow, you're kind of a dick. Why did you make something like this in the first place?"
Yeah, and they've tried, and the reaction is usually that of like, why would you make an entire movie just to shame us for liking this movie?
Yes, and it's so the plot hole thing that you were talking about is part of one of my hot takes, which is like Alien does it so well, right? Because in Alien, even in the director's cut version, Ripley never interacts with the actual grown xenomorph. Like she never fights that thing off. Like as far as Ripley is concerned, she takes that motherfucker out by blowing up the ship. Like she never has a one-on-one fight with it. The big fight that she has in the movie is against Ash, who is an antagonist, but isn't the antagonist of the movie. And so audiences are pretty satisfied. They're like, oh, okay, well, at least she defeated a bad guy by the time she gets in the ship. And spoilers for a movie that's over 40 years old. Um, but then, like, we see this lull. We're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we just killed the big monster off screen. Ridley Scott ran out of budget. No, the perfect specimen figured out a way off the ship and onto her ship, and now she has to confront it. Now she has to fight it, and now she has to sacrifice potentially her own safety to do so. And so we're satisfied in that because we weren't satisfied of it before. We had like a little appetizer, enough where we're like, if the credits rolled, we wouldn't hate the movie. But definitively, like she didn't actually defeat the bad guy of the movie, right? And it works. It's been 40 years and it still works. Then an Alien Romulus, which is essentially a fan fiction of every alien movie ever written, and sometimes in the like a really great way. Like I saw Alien Romulus in theaters. I really enjoyed that theatrical watch experience because every single person in that theater was a fan, whether or not they had like seen all the Alien movies or were just excited to like watch the new one kind of thing. But that movie definitively ends. They successfully defeat all of the active bad guys in the movie and then are like we're going to our new world. And then Ridley Scott had a gun to the back of Fede Alvarez's head and was like, "Oh, by the way, you forgot Prometheus." And so they tacked on a second surprise third act that like mirrors the end of Alien where it's like, "Oh no, you're actually not safe. There's a giant killer baby running around." But it feels weird and feels disproportionate to the rest of the movie because the movie already ended. She had already defeated the actual aliens. Like we saw her actively like save her friend and like do all these things. And we also took out Rook, which is like, you know, other Ian Holm. Like we had already ended the conflicts that we needed to end in this movie and our characters had finally earned the ability to leave and start this new life together. And then they were like, but what if we did a weird extra thing? We've got this other idea. Um, so it's just it like to me, I was like, oh, this is just you're tacking something on for the sake of tacking something on. So I think the trope you brought up was a good idea. So yeah, I guess that's like almost a good segue into our horror hot takes. My big thing with hot takes and shit talking in general is it's very important to bring receipts when you do it.
Right?
I don't think I could ever hurt Fede Alvarez's feelings. I don't think Fede Alvarez, if he ever heard what I had to say about his movie, would be like. But if I ever had to say them to Fede Alvarez's face, the important thing would be I can bring up the examples in the actual movie in order to do so. And I think that's the difference between uh, like having something inflammatory because it's contrary to people what they have to say and just like being mean. So that's like my basis for what I consider a good hot take is yes, it's inflammatory, And although like I'm not wrong.
Yeah, backed up with something substantial.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean I've struggled to concoct a hot take. I think I think one of them I'm going to steal from Stephanie, but also something you had mentioned earlier reminded me of it. I'm just wasn't that big of a fan of Cabin in the Woods. I thought that like its entire point was pointing out the things.
Mhm.
Um and that's fine, but there has to be a reason for that too, and the reason can't be I want everyone to feel smug for being as smart as me for knowing these things. Um and I don't know. I got that whiff off of a lot of Joss Whedon stuff, but that's just me. I don't know. His stuff's always given me the ick, and I said that back when that was the hotter take, and it's cooled off since. I guess, and again, this I don't think this is a hot take at all, but the Nightmare on Elm Street remake is one of it made. I don't remember it very well because it was bad, but it made me feel the second worst of any film I've ever seen. The first was Da Vinci Code. I don't know why that movie depressed me so terribly. But yeah, the second one,
Was it Tom Hanks's wig?
that was part of it. Tom Hanks like was barely awake for most of that film, kind of like me, nodding off in my seat. But yeah, I don't know why. Just felt terrible walking out of the theater after that one. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember watching it with friends. I was like, this movie is the worst. It was just like the most malicious jump scares, and that was kind of the only thing that the movie had going for it. And then I remember being so like I wanted to walk out of that theater and just be like, that movie was ass. But by that point, like no one else was saying it, and I didn't want to be the only one that was shitting on the movie everyone else liked. So I just kept my mouth shut for like the whole time, and it felt like I was going to burst. I think we even went to get like food after that, and I was just chewing on my sandwich, getting progressively depressed. So I wish I had better receipts to explain exactly why that movie made me feel so awful. So I'm trying to focus on how I felt versus what my memory of the movie tells me. So yeah.
Well, if it's any consolation, I think it's the inverse of the Evil Dead reboot. It's like, yes, they tried to take something campy and silly from, the 80s and turn it into a legitimate horror franchise. But the problem is that like Nightmare on Elm Street is inherently silly. Like
Yeah,
so
Freddy's been
much of it
campy
is
since day one.
like if you think about it
He's
for
got his
more than 30
one-liners and shit. Yeah.
He's got his one-liners and shit. If you think about it for more than 30 seconds, the premise falls apart. And so like you engage in it because it's so ridiculous. And yes, the idea that like Freddy Krueger as a creature is very scary looking to look at and would be a great like malicious villain. But the overcorrection in the darkness there felt so weird in the respect that I was like, I actually don't know who this is for. Because again, like, anytime you stray into is he a child molester territory, I feel like you're not asking the right questions. And like, have you ever seen Darkness Falls?
No.
Darkness Falls is a movie that like came out and then everyone forgot about and it's an evil tooth fairy movie that starts off like in a way that I think like in Nightmare on Elm Street probably could have utilized and I think would have been less icky. But like the movie is about like in the 1800s there is this like old lady who lives in the woods and kids bring her their teeth and in exchange she gives them like candy. And one day, two kids go into the woods to give her their teeth, and then they don't come back out. And so, after about 2 hours, the town goes, "That woman killed our kids," and then they burn her house down with her inside, and they kill her. Then, like an hour later, those kids pop out of the woods, being like, "Whoops, we got lost. We're seven." And so they're like, "Ugh, awful." So then she comes back as like an evil tooth fairy, and she's like, "Okay, cool. I'm just gonna kill all of you people and like wreck your shit." And she's really scary. And the thing is that like she can only exist in darkness. And like the opening scene, like to introduce us to the main character, his family is killed by the Tooth Fairy, and he like hides in a bathroom like with that like bright white fluorescent light. And it's so creepy because you can hear his family like being murked, and he's just like sitting there in the tub like listening to it, and then she appears in the door but like can't go into the bathroom because it's bright, and she just like stands there for a second. It's like it's really scary. But I was like, "Oh, this is cool because we're not justifying her behavior in any way, shape, or form, but we are giving her like an interesting backstory that like still makes her a villain, but also we're like good for her a little bit. Freddy Krueger being a bad guy and then becoming a worse guy is so uninteresting to me. So but oh yeah, no. One of the comments in the Twitch chat, I say as an ancient being, Darkness Falls is PG-13 and is like marketed as like a Tooth Fairy movie, and so like you had parents being like, oh yeah, like my 10 to like 13-year-old can watch this. Wrong. Wrong. It's not bloody. It's not like overly violent. There's no like boobs or anything like that, but it is so creepy and weird. Um and by the way, like this man loses his mind. He's like institutionalized and he's like finally released back into society only to find out that like this bitch is still killing people. And he's like, nope, can't deal with this. Um, so,
Oh,
oh yeah,
I'm gonna jump in here. I've come up with answers
please.
to all
Yes.
the blanks that I had before. All right, a
Great.
movie that I will defend,
Great.
but I haven't really been in the position to defend it, but I would. My Bloody Valentine 3D. I think
With
it's
Jensen Ackles?
yes, it's
And
super
a
super fun.
9-minute sequence of a naked woman running in the truck stop.
Yes, it's 3D. Remember? Yes, there is a 9-minute sequence of it. Yeah, no, it's fantastic though. It's I think it does a great job of acknowledging its like its campy background. It like a lot of horror films, I think it has the mini movie up front, the inciting action, and that's where a lot of the camp and silliness is. And then like it shifts gears, but then like from there, it's basically an acceleration back to that point for the rest of the film. And like the way that it builds on itself is super fun, and it's not too smart for the audience. That movie, I'll say.
It's not too smart for the audience, but also it does have a really fun twist.
It really
that you
does.
don't expect from a movie like that because it's so like, oh my God. Like, it's the perfect make-out background movie until it starts getting really interesting and you're like, hold on, wait a second.
Yeah. Wait. What did they just say? Yeah.
Wait. And it's so funny because that movie came out like right around the time that Jared Padalecki did the Friday the 13th reboot. And I was like, how did you get on such opposite ends on the IP spectrum, boys? No, that's a great one. That is a great one to go to fisticuffs for.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I've suggested it to people before, and they give me that really like I'm okay. You're not going to watch it. Never mind. We'll move on from that. All right, my hot take. I think actually most people have agreed with this, but my hot take is that the last 3 minutes of The Witch was really unnecessary. When I was watching that and like all the bad things happen, and then the lead kind of puts her head on like the desk or the bench and it just cuts to black. I was like, call it. That's it. Show the credits. We're done. I don't need to know anything else. I don't want to know anything else. But then it fades back up. She goes out into the woods and like meets with actual witches. So the movie is like at the very end is like, yes, it's all real magic, all that blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it was so much cooler when it could have gone either way. And it was like potentially human paranoia. And I loved it up until that. But I was like, man, I know for a fact that they fucking tested this with audiences and people are like, I don't get it. So they had to add some stuff and it was so perfect right before then. So it doesn't ruin it really, but I just like, it could have been so strong and so confident just ending right there.
Yeah. Have you seen The Ritual?
Oh.
It's from 2017. It's very, very British. But like, I think it's a really great modern option to something like the Blair Witch Project, which I bring up in the respect that not just because it has the word witch in it, but because it's one of those movies that you are questioning what is going on in a way that you can't trust your main characters, but you also can't trust yourself in the respect of what you're seeing. And I think the Vivitch is an example of the fact that like Robert Eggers has never not been honest about the kinds of movies he is going to make. And the unfortunate thing is that I don't think a lot of executives or audience members understand what that is. And like The Witch is, I feel like, the most commercial concept that he has. And it does strike that balance between like, is it spooky witch stuff? Is the devil real? Or does this poor girl have like a debilitating brain disease and she's losing her mind, right? And either way, you feel good about that. But unfortunately, Robert Eggers takes 26 years to tell a story. And by the time you get to the end, you kind of want to know if it's one way or another. Um, but like, cause like The Lighthouse does the same thing where you're like, where are we going? What is happening here? Are we going to get to somewhere? Because the ride is really great. Love the ride. I'm getting car sick.
Hmm.
I don't know how much longer I can handle this. But that's like one of my hot takes in general is that like, uh, I think the term elevated horror is a scam.
Nice.
And it infuriates me so much because the term elevated horror then diminishes every other kind of horror. Like it's like, oh, well, if it's not elevated horror, then it's shitty below the bar horror. And I'm like, no. If you said, oh yes, this is an elevated comedy, you'd get kicked in the nuts. Like people are like, what? That's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Um, so when elevated horror kind of came out, when A24 started to have money and put more, schlock out into theaters, people who've always hated the genre was like, oh, well, now I can get into it because it's smart. Because horror always, despite performing beautifully at the box office, despite having a huge demographic of people, despite also being very accessible to most audiences, has always been picked on as like the doofus burnout of genres. And I'm like, no, most people in general like horror movies or like know about horror movies or feel like they can pick up and put it down very easily. And so this idea that like, oh, well, now we have to be smarter than everybody else is just like so weird to me because I also feel like so much elevated horror is kind of just vibes. Like, again, where are we going with this? And while you have a lot of like wackadoo, goofy horror movies that like I don't think stand the testament of time, and even like more like modern day stuff also like doesn't really work. At the end of the day, you're still being delivered on a beginning and middle and end, which I think is important for any kind of story. Um, and I think that like it's just weird to me to have created a cool kids table in a genre, by the way, that is the most diverse of any genre. Like you have more subgenres of horror than any other genre we have. Um, and it's like it's so weird to me because I also feel like sometimes elevated horror gets stuck in its own like circle jerk that it kind of forgets that the audience gets ahead of it. Like, did you see Oddity?
Oh, not familiar with
I
that
don't
one.
recommend that one.
I I remembered my original hot take that I also
Oh,
forgot.
please.
I'm looking up oddity, but yeah, I didn't like Megan all that much, and I think it's a good example of something that pretends to be elevated horror but kind of isn't. In that like Megan or the concept of the piece is that it's the protagonist dealing with her lack of desire to have kids or her resentment of kids and her questioning her value as a woman or whatever by not doing that. But it really isn't. Like it just kind of there's some notes put in there and some scenes that indicate that, and also just like a weird pivot in behavior halfway through the film that isn't very well explained. But also like I appreciate camp, but the camp in there seemed kind of awkwardly smashed in. I like dancing, don't get me wrong, but there was no reason for it. She had never done that before that. And then also the dude she killed at the end of that scene wasn't even really demonstrated to be a bad guy or was threatening like the daughter. So there was no reason for her to do that either. So I don't know. That was just weird to me.
No, Megan feels like an overcorrection in response to the audience. Like they reshot that movie to make it silly.
Okay.
And because what it feels like to me is they made a middling movie. Like they made a movie that like had its moments in it that were like funny. And this is something that I constantly find myself up against as someone who loves to write genre, but my horror stuff has bits in it. Like it has jokes in it, but it's not a horror comedy, and people have a very difficult time being able to separate those things. I think they made Megan. Megan was scary. Megan was like a poppy fun horror movie that had some jokes in it to like lighten the audience. And they went, oh no, we need to overcorrect now and really add in like the comedy bit. Because then you saw the second one and they were like, oh, this is like the inverse of James Cameron's Aliens, which is like, I'm going to do a different genre, but at least I know what the original movie was about. This is like, we're going to take a different script and put Megan in it. And it was just very weird. But like, the example I typically give when I'm like, I want you to understand that like horror should be fun and doesn't have to be a horror comedy are examples like Ready or Not,
Mm. Yeah.
which is like has receipts of hilarious. It knows how to like laugh at itself. It has a lot of fun, but there is some really good terror in there. There's kills, there's mystery, there's intrigue, there's devastation. That is a movie that made me laugh, scream, and cry. And I'm like, that is a horror movie. And it's something that, like I had to have a conversation with my reps about because I'm like when they had this one script that I wrote, they kept sending it out as a horror comedy, and people were like, this isn't like Shaun of the Dead. Like Shaun of the Dead is a really good example of a horror comedy where comedy comes first and it's a love letter to horror. And then it has like some really dark and horrifying moments. Like I have to constantly remind people that he kills his mom in that movie. Um, but I'm like, no, it's just a horror movie. And horror can be fun. But yeah. So I've I'm trying to like cycle for I'm sorry, conversations can turn into podcasts with me really fast. The safe word is stop at any point.
Oh no, thought that was the point. We're just horror movie chatting. Easy.
Horror movie chit chatting, yeah. I mean like yeah, I think like we just kicked off so every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in October we watch a scary movie from like a list that we have and we like roll for it with a D20. And we kick that off with AVP weekend. So it's Alien on Friday, Predator on Saturday, and Aliens on Sunday. And that is the household that I grew up in. My dad has always been like a big fan of the practical stuff. His hero in life is Steve Wang, who is known as the creature creator. When you couldn't get Stan Winston, you get Steve Wang. Steve, has made all the fish people for Guillermo del Toro. And Steve made a lot of like really fun, campy movies back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, including the Guyver live action movies,
Oh
which were
man.
crazy. This is his Guyver. My dad made a little like
Oh,
helmet.
that's cute.
So, and Steve was one of the original sculptors on Predator. And I really love those movies. Like I love Alien and Aliens. I love Aliens more. I think the first 35 minutes of that movie don't need to be in there. But I feel like that way about most movies that are over 2 hours long. But I give it a pass because I'm like, you are rewriting the franchise at that point. I think Predator is also really fun and knows how to very subtly be like a horror movie for guys who refuse to admit that they can be scared, which I think is cool. And it's also again like a testament to how awesome special effects were and still could be. And so the both franchises have just broken my heart because the more they explain themselves, the worse they get. And it's just baffling to me because I'm like, you're Shrekking yourself into oblivion. And like I like the trailer for Predator Badlands just made me so upset because I'm like, we know you can do fully practical predators. It's an animated movie. That is an animated film. Anyway, um I'll go with my last hot take that will hopefully inspire you to offer another hot take. But it's that Scream is the best worst thing to happen to the slasher genre.
I was thinking about that. Because I feel like maybe it was the advent of the internet. I'm not sure what, But I feel like in general, not even just in horror, although horror was certainly influenced by it, movies had a runaway problem of trying to get like smarter and smarter and smarter. And the meta infatuation is part of that. I think, meta is kind of the meta trans universe stuff is like the easy place to go to add what is seemingly writing complexity or lore complexity. But yeah, I feel like that's at odds with horror. The audience wants explanations, but you really should not give that to them because the horror is mostly in the unexplained, or the mysterious. And I was trying to track where that began, or what like cultural influences kicked it off. The works of Christopher Nolan; those were very popular. Things like Memento, kind of I think made people infatuated with that sort of like meta twist. And horror is a great vehicle for those, and it started happening in horror more, I think, around that era. And yeah, I feel like Scream was the first one where, specifically the scene where like, what is it, Jamie Kennedy? God damn it, Jamie Kennedy is explaining the rules of a horror film while they're happening upstairs, and the intercut between those is one of the first times where I was like, oh, this is one of the earliest movies I've seen where the script is telling the audience about the trope while it's happening, and it makes you feel pretty smart, especially when you feel like you get it. I also realized the other weird thing is like, what is it? Was it Skeet Ulrich always talking in like movie terms? I don't know. Yeah. It's just a weird affectation that weirdly serves the movie very well because it happens in the universe of horror film. So yeah, once all those things click, you're like, oh, like there was something to get beyond just screaming women getting slashed, which is, it's still very fun and campy with, or stuck in a garage door or whatever. But yeah, it did kick off it kicked off a lot of Scream movies, but also a lot of films that I think tried to have that beat. And some of them I think were very good. Shutter Island, Identity is one that I think about a lot, that I still really like. But yeah, a lot that either paid lip service to that idea or just didn't even successfully do it. Yeah, I guess there really weren't many slashers after that. The litany of Halloween reboots.
Well, the thing is that like I say the worst because in two ways it ruined the slasher genre in the respect that now every single slasher had to be like, oh, well, we know we're a slasher and you're stupid for liking them. Like it turned, like the quiet kid in class, the second he gets any attention, he becomes the most obnoxious person on the face of the earth. And you're like, oh, wait, maybe there's a reason why you were supposed to be quiet. Like Wes Craven wrote created a movie that was a love letter to the genre. It was a celebration of the tropes that really worked, a subversion that the tropes were on their way out, and hey, these are relics that we don't need to see in movies anymore, and did it in a really good and fun way. It's why we have the modern day take on the final girl. Sydney Prescott is the second like version of like the modern day final girl that we see, and this is like I have a lot of big feelings about that, but like Sydney Prescott is essentially the outline for what modern day final girls became, which was, hey, it's not just our virtue that allows us to survive, it's the fact that we A, know we're in a movie, and B, we're making good decisions. We can literally fight back. Versus like Laurie Strode in the original Halloween, who really only final girls because Michael comes to her house last. Otherwise, like Lori only survives because she's not having sex. She's not listening to her parents. She's literally doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing, and that's what makes Michael come to her last, which is allows her to survive. While Ripley, on the other hand, I would suggest is much more of a good example of a modern day final girl, especially in Alien, which again is just a haunted house movie in space, because Ripley survives through the virtue of the fact that she's the only one who's like, this is bad. Listen to me. And people aren't listening to her, not because they're dumb movie characters, but because she's a woman in a place of no authority in a structure that would give her no authority. And the men in the movie that do have authority, one is bad and the other is Tom Skerritt, they just don't listen to her and like want to continue on. So that I think is like a better example. But like Sidney Prescott really did set the tone for like, hey, slashers, when you pick your final girl, make sure you pick her in someone that we want to root for. We want to see succeed. We want her to see her beat the ass of the person she's up against. Great. However, again, it's a franchise that Ouroboros itself to death. Um, it is like they made fun of itself to the point that it became the movies that it was making fun of. Um, and also really kind of diminishes Sydney's strength because I'm sorry, how many times can this happen to you before you realize that you might be the problem, right? Or before we're like, how long is it going to take you to figure this out? And that's what I don't really love about like the new Scream movies in general, because I'm like, we know one of them is Ghostface, or at least two of them are. So we're not playing a movie like a game anymore of like, who is it? Because it's almost always the exact person we think it is. Oh, it's Jack Quaid. The second that man came on screen, I was like, it's Jack Quaid. What? What do you mean? It's Jack Quaid. And guess what? It was in fact Jack Quaid. So, I mean, like, to me, I was like, the original Scream is good. It stands the testament of time, but it is a grenade. You're supposed to lob that in, it does its job, and that's it.
Mm.
And it stays good. It's also a premise that I think is actually really tough to do in modern day because of cell phones and how much access we have to each other. Like, plausibly, Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard can bait and switch each other like they can because they don't have access to one another like they do. Because people like, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, no, I'm at so and so's house. Hey, no, I'm looking at Snap Maps. You're at my house. What are you doing here? Wah! Like, it's hard to sell a premise that could be so easily solved by our modern technology and devices. Um, and that's my whole thing.
Well, maybe we'll get some kind of illustrative horror film that is rooted in the concept of misinformation, like finding that and extrapolating it into some kind of monster that perverts what you see or alters. I don't know. There's something to be done there. Mission Impossible tried it. It was very dumb, but there's
I mean,
opportunity.
it only what leaves one alive kind of dabbles in that,
Yeah.
where everybody tries to, save face until it's like, are you sure about that?
Yeah, and it's not really the evidence that convince people. It's people breaking their facade that
The
convinces people.
response
Yeah.
to the evidence. And that's, I think, how real life is a lot
It
of the
really
times, where
is.
it's like you could be confronted with the truth, black and white photo evidence of the act, and still some people are like, well, I don't know. What's the context? And it's almost always how the bad guy responds to getting caught that makes you be like, oh, an innocent person wouldn't respond like that. I'm sorry. What?
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you brought it back to it only leaves one alive. What is are you breathing a little bit now that the project is out there? You'd still kind of I can see you're still, we're trying to get the word out a little bit, but what's been your experience now that it's up and posted and real?
Up posted in real. I am so happy with how it turned out because like it was again a real labor of love and also like a real long shot because horror is so much a what are we seeing like medium. Um and I was like, oh my God, like when we were cutting it together and I was like listening to it like without any of like the sound design and things of that nature, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is 2 hours long. No, like but here's the thing, I also like I'm not an audiobooks or podcast girly to begin with. So I was so stuck in the binary of movie brain. Um and then and then I heard the performances and I was like, oh gosh. I almost like forgot that I wrote it for a second because I was so like in it. My mom has a cameo role in it. She's the mom voice in that like horrible flashback. Um and uh she's like I was so freaked out when that happened. I didn't even realize it was me. And I was like, "Oh, great. Amazing. That's so awesome." Um I've had people be like, "Wow, this is actually scary." And the actually only kind of hurts. And so that's like really cool, but when I wrote it, I was like, "Oh, this is, my whole bag is dump a bunch of people in one location, pick them off one by one kind of thing." that I was like, oh, I think this lends itself to being like a radio play or a podcast because so much of it is just the characters being at each other's throats and how they communicate to one another. Um, and everyone delivered so hard. Like it was a transformative experience, I think, for everybody involved in terms of like getting into their characters and just being these terrible, horrible, no good, very bad people that you slip into. So that was like really cool. I'm like, I'm not like a big social media person, so coming up with the social media strategy for this has been an adventure. So right now I'm in the middle of doing so there's a trade publication called Deadline. It's one of the most popular trades. If you are interested in the entertainment industry and being in the entertainment industry, I highly recommend checking out the trades, just learning like the language of what's out there. But sometimes they do interviews with like directors. One of my most favorite ones of recent memory is they sat down with Ryan Coogler to talk about Sinners. And so I'm doing a parody of that called a Deadline article with me and Tim Adirone, who is the marionette that I've used in all of the like photos and visuals and stuff. And Tim Adirone is an anagram for marionette. So that's been really fun. And yeah, like I was cutting together like some promo clips and stuff that'll go out. And for me, like this wasn't about like creating something that was like gonna go viral. It is so hard to get people to engage with stuff in general. And I hope people just like end up watching it because it is really fun. And it is something that I think is surprising and it's new and yet it's familiar. Like it's that perfect thing to put on in the background while you're doing laundry or putting together your Halloween costume or something like that. But I made it because I want to make the movie version and creating this IP and being able to have this to like send to, dev execs to, have along with the script. I was just really happy that this came out so freakishly well.
Well, I had a great time participating. Very grateful that you asked me to be a part of it.
You were wonderful to collaborate with.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I always hope to do more of this kind of thing. So let's hope that this goes through. Not that I'll be a part of this, but just in general, give it a look. It only leaves one alive. I have the YouTube link pinned in Twitch chat there. I'm going to link it in YouTube as well.
Sick.
And Lex, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your time and your hot horror movie takes. I always learn so much about film, and I get a watch list to take away, so that's always wonderful.
Yes. And I mean, if people want more horror recommendations for It Only Leaves One Alive, I posted a bunch of my gateway horror recs. And if you want to dabble more into horror in general, please check those out. They're on my Instagram. But lots of big feelings there about things. And to end it on the Cabin in the Woods thing, it's not a movie I recommend to people in general, which shocks a lot of people because it's so Lexx coded, like in the respect that it's fun, it's irreverent, it's scary, it's spooky. But to me, I'm like, I also love the corporatization of the supernatural. Like, I think season 5 of Angel is the best in the Buffyverse, and I've had several people come for me for that. But I'm like, no, this is sick. Like the idea that Wolfram and Hart like deals in actual like contracts, like demonic contracts, I think is like so cool. But I don't think Cabin in the Woods is for everybody. Unlike You're Next. Like if you want to see something that celebrates horror tropes, and is fun and is scary and is easy and also has, 20 seconds of boobs, You're Next is the movie to check out for that. All right, great. Thank you so much for having me, Lawrence. You're great, never change. And you gave me nightmares. I hope you give more people nightmares.
It's the season for nightmares, right? So yes, thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, amazing.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Ooh, there's an update available. How spooky. Yes, It Only Leaves One Alive. The horror audio experience. 2 hours long. Freely available on YouTube for your spooky season. There's 2 Michael J's. Like I said, I play a very bad man, and that's fun. To me, that's me kind of providing commentary on all the bad men in my life that I've seen be bad. How dare you? Michael J. Fox was never one of them, though. Even Robo Fox, who was stealing this man's Pepsi. Thank you for watching. I'm not done streaming just yet. I'm not 100% sure when I'm going to stream next either. I'm going to take a quick lunch break. I'm going to enjoy a light salad. And then I'll be back with either more Silent Hill or let's see if I can convince Steph. Maybe it's Resident Evil time. Also, yes.
I love my Pepsi so much.
That's Vin Diesel playing Michael J. Fox from the 80s Pepsi ad we just saw. He really can do it all, can't he? All right, I'll be back in a bit. Thanks again for watching.